Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Lily's Show and Tell. Lily stands for Lifelong Information Literacy, and we're a group of librarians and information professionals who work to promote lifelong information literacy. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be sent out by the end of the week. Please feel free to put your questions into the chat. I will note down any questions for our speaker. And finally, if you want to learn more about Lily or presenting your own show and tell event, I put my email address in my Zoom name, so you can email me at any time, or April as well. So now I'll hand it over to Morgan.
Hello, all. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties. I was just using these headphones yesterday and I was like, oh, weird. I haven't charged them in a long time. Haha. But as I said previously, my name is Morgan Brickey-Jones. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the K-12 librarian here at UTA Libraries. So I thought I would give a little background before I kind of got into the thick of it. And what I'm doing here today, and what I'm doing in my job, is to kind of make the university library, particularly our library, has spaces that we call the creative spaces. So we have our studios, which is revolves around digital creation and that type of situation. So we do video production. We support students in their photography endeavors. We have sound studios. We have a green screen studio that is in the making, and our studio space, our digital creation studio space, is the newest of our creative spaces. We also have a fab lab. Our fab lab is rather large. It's 8,000 square feet, and we have a lot of resources there. So 3D printing, laser cutting, vinyl cutting, a wood shop, glass studio, etc. And we also have a video game basement. So I kind of see my position in the library as showing off our spaces and making the distinction between our spaces seem seamless, like there is none. And additionally, I do have requests for research trips, which I will go into on like how I do those. And yeah, just and then a little background on me, I guess. I am a former, I guess also current, I kind of see it as like a continuous state of being, a children's librarian. I am originally from Florida. I received my degree at Florida State, and I became an adult services librarian out of grad school. But our adult services was aged 12 to 100. So I did all of our teen programming at that library system, and I was there for about 4.5, 5 years. And then I moved here to Texas for a job. I then worked at the Arlington Public Library for the next 6 years. And I was on the children's services team there. I provided a lot of service to tweens and kind of older children. And then there I did a plethora of programs, but the main program that kind of helped me, move over into academic libraries and secure this job was I established our field trip program at the public library. So the Arlington Public Library has while I was there, had a flagship downtown location, and we were interested in kind of showing that location we had a strong relationship with the public schools to bring in public schools as well as different types, private daycares, summer camps, etc., into the library. But that kind of creates a unique kind of host of issues that we'll kind of talk about here with like space and staffing. So kind of I oversaw that and saw a few thousand students come through the library up until COVID. And then we suspended that program, and UTA Libraries had one person in this position before me, but I think they were fully remote for their tenure. And I came in to UTA Libraries in October of last year. And during that time, I have seen since October of 2021, over 1,000 K-12 students have come on intentional and they're just wandering around and they stop in. I am counting those um, to visit our library spaces. So the charges of my position are just experiential learning based. So that is a big part of what I do and what the type of experiences that I try to facilitate here at the library are based on, you know, those tenets of experiential learning. So that's a big part of what I'll be talking about. On this screen here, you'll see these are photos from two of the trips are here at our library space. One of the trips is a stop motion animation trip where I bring digital cameras and Play-Doh to some schools, and then I take their photos back and run them through DaVinci, which is an open, free kind of Photoshop Windows Movie Maker situation. And I put those on YouTube, they're stop motion videos. So those are just some of the things that I've done here. So I think another question, and maybe y'all don't immediately have this question, but I think some do with regards to academic libraries when we're working with older learners. Why? Why do we need to have K-12 groups in our library? And for some of you, this may be like, oh, it's obvious why, Morgan, why are you even talking about this? But for others, we may need a reminder, I guess. I think one of the whys that they established my position and why I think other institutions may want to think about doing this is need. Like, do you have groups that come in or email you? Particularly if you have a makerspace or if you have like some sort of distinctive um, experience in your library, do you have groups that are contacting you and are interested in visiting? And what do you do with that? Do you, you know, say, yeah, you can come whenever, but you need to lead yourselves, or how does that look? Before I started, we had again, our Fab Lab is a large, widely known in the community space, and they, to this day, probably 50% of the inquiries I receive are to the Fab Lab, and they want to come to the Fab Lab. So they were seeing a lot of that, and as many of us are familiar with, the time needed to kind of develop a trip for 50 ninth graders is extensive, and so they needed someone who was dedicated to figuring that out. Um, I also think, and this goes hand in hand with need, is that having this be someone's focus, I think provides a cohesive and organized approach to these requests. I think sometimes you run into trouble when one group has a certain experience and they tell all their friends, which K-12 teachers will do, but you're not able to deliver that same experience to another group because the staff member isn't there, they left. You don't know what they did. So I think that is also important, because I have found, and I talk over this later, with kind of drumming up groups or partners in this, that a lot of times it is word of mouth. Like, how, you know, we're coming to UTA, what can you do? And that happens quite a bit. And I think it's important to figure out what you're going to do for these people, and have that be across the board. I think also investing in the K-12 K-16 pipeline is really important. So sorry about that, I was plugging something in. So we're actively figuring out how we can uh, enhance, not enhance, that's the wrong choice of word. How we can really invest in our younger friends, the people who are going to be replacing the undergrads of tomorrow, you know? And I think it's really important that when these groups come onto your campus, our campus, wherever, because they will, they are right now. I guarantee you there's a band of third graders on your campus somewhere at this very moment that they're shown what they can do in your spaces. And I do think that that's very important. And I think that leads into community building. Like, how are you showing up for your community? Because nobody is an island. Um, and I think that that was something that this university and this the library dean took seriously. Like, how are we um, able to give this cohesive, organized, experiential learning based, um, frankly delightful experience to our community members who are interested. And I think you don't need to have someone like me who this is their job in your library to do that. I think it helps. I think if I could advocate for all places who need one to have a K-12 librarian, I would. But I also think that you are able to do on a low budget, no budget, to kind of develop that type of experience where you can give groups that come in and are interested some sort of glimpse into what you're doing, and what they be able to do when they get there. So I'm just gonna get to the start of the show here first, front load my presentation a little bit. Um, I I do have some low to no cost ideas for engagement that I think a lot of places can adopt pretty easily. I think in every community you're going to have schools. I find a lot of IB schools are very, and I've also done this with some private charter magnet schools as well, that they're interested in a research trip. And I think facilitating a research trip is exactly, I talked with my colleague a lot, who is our undergraduate success librarian, about what her um research, these 101 classes that she goes into, what does that look like? And I think that looks a lot like a research trip from some 12th graders who are coming in. They are literally going to be at your university tomorrow. They can handle that same presentation that you give um, undergrads, and they're coming in. I receive, I think this past semester I did 2 or 3 of these, and this next semester I have 2 or 3 lined up. And what we do is, if your university is like mine and a barrier to access is just getting onto your internet. I borrowed from OIT some Ethernet cords, and like that just hooks into our the Ethernet coming from the building, and that kind of bypasses that logging in from the Wi-Fi, and that helps get them all on at the same time. I do have some laptops, but our OIT does create like logins that you can use for different groups. So I think kind of developing a little bit of relationship with them may help. You may not have those same barriers at your place. I hope you don't, because that was one of my stressors. But I think in doing a research trip, you are sharing your resources with the community. Um, and you're showing a friendly face of someone who, if they do come, if they do end up coming to where you are, they know somebody. Another idea that I'm actually implementing tomorrow, I have a group coming tomorrow, is stations. I really love stations. It's a public librarian in me. um, you can I have a station in our studios with some robots that I have, but also I've done a stations where we just put in our tech lending. Like, what do we have in tech lending that looks remotely fun? We have a drawing pad, we have like a drawing pad, we have a MIDI keyboard, we have, just things that we have in our tech lending. If you don't have a robust tech lending, do you have a couple cameras? Like, do you have, I have a puzzle, um, one of our, one of our student employees whipped up some coloring sheets that, like, I've taken everywhere. Just stuff like that, like, very low barrier. This is a station I'm going to have a station in our fab lab where I have fabricated. We have and if you have a Cricut, you basically have like a laser cutter, not a laser cutter, a vinyl cutter. And I've made some holiday themed stickers. It's hard to see the outline on the camera, you probably can't. That's a wreath. We have like an ornament here. And part of these stickers also is like if you've cut stickers on a vinyl cutter, you know that you need to weed out the parts that are like left over. Like if you have a little circle in your sticker, you need to take out the hole from the circle before you put your sticker on anything. So I bring out like our weeding kits, and like they are able to do that. Um and I also have some stamps. If you have a laser cutter, a laser cutter can cut that rubber that you see on like a traditional stamp. So we made stamps. So I have those still that I put out. Um, and then in our gaming basement, we have like some free arcade games. And then we also have a graduate student who likes to do game development. So we've got some whiteboards that we do, like if you could recreate a game that you love, like what are you, like remake Monopoly or what have you, and they really go crazy. And I have this air dry foam that's on Amazon for like $12, and it's like 33 little packets of foam, and they just like go crazy over it. And it's a lot of bang for your buck. um and so those are my stations, and that's what they're going to do tomorrow. They're going to do 30 minutes at each station, because I was like, you know what? We don't have the staffing or the bandwidth for me to do a 2-hour program on December 15th. Do stations work for you? um, and then buttons. I love a button maker. I had to put this in here. Buttons were the star of the show at the public library where I was. Um, in fact, I was just at the ACTOL conference, which is like now I'm gonna forget. I have my water bottle right here. Creative Technologies and Academic Libraries, something like that. And they NC State had a map that they had then taken little parts of the map and put them in buttons. And it like you had to find where your button was on the map, if that makes sense. I loved that idea. I'm excited to use it. I want to use it so bad. But that would be a really fun activity with like 10 kids if you had a big map of your campus and you like cut it up and put it in the button, you know what I mean? And have them just find where their button is on the map. Like that's fun. That's an experiential learning STEM activity. Like how do you use a map? And then the stop motion animation field trip, which I mentioned before, I use digital cameras that our tech lending had purchased before my time. And but there is an app. I think it's called like Stop Motion Creator. I'm sorry, I'm opening my phone because I have it on my phone, and I saw this on a webinar, and it's free. And trying to see if I have it somewhere where I could show you. It's just like called like Stop Motion. Like the emblem is like looks like that. It's like a little camera. You can't see it, but I think it's just called like Stop Motion, and it is free. And so you have iPads or any kind of device with a camera, you can use that app. And I will create a thing with links. I'm sorry I didn't. But yes, I have links. I have the receipts. So the stop motion animation, I do find that like that's been the one I have done the most. It's a heavy hitter for me. And I use DaVinci Resolve if I'm using an old-fashioned digital camera, which a lot of these students, if they're in 8th or 9th grade, this is the first time they have ever used a digital camera in their life. And that's fun immediately. And so they take, I like to say 20 to 60 pictures makes a good video. And I found a YouTube video of just some guy showing how he makes a stop motion animation video in DaVinci Resolve. I think I put that into YouTube. And and then I put them on an unlisted YouTube channel that I then share with the teacher. And it makes for a good trip where they have like an outcome that I like. And it kind of shows like how much hard work this is. Like, we talk about like what are some stop motion videos that you can think of. And like right now, of course, we think of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and how much work that took. Like I think sometimes we don't think about that when we look at creative pursuits, and it kind of brings that home. So these are just some low to no cost ideas for engagement. I would say all of these things, of course, with with the buttons, you would need the button maker. But if you have some of these tools, I think you can really, oh, stickers and photos. I didn't talk about that. I really liked this trip. I did this with a group of, I think they were like seniors, so they were very cool, and they came on Halloween. And I asked our studios if they could loan me a student worker, and we have some photo studios. They're just tiny rooms with like photo backdrops. And so he took groups of like 4 or 5 and took a group photo. And then while we were over in the Fab Lab, weeding out some stickers, doing a tour, we printed the photos just on our printer, like on the printer. And so we printed the photo on a piece of paper, and then they decorated it with some stickers. And like that was good, you know? So that was something I did with it, and we will talk about group size a little later, but that was something I did with a large group. I probably wouldn't do it as large again. I think it was like 50 students. And that was why I did group photos and not like individual or like pick your best friend. Because I needed, to have less volume. Um, and so this, I don't know. This has been something that I've run into. So I always assume that if I run into something, that other people probably have as well. So I wanted to address it because I think it's important. Um, I have some groups message me, and I use this, we want a 3D print as an example of an expectation they have that is not realistic for our audience or our time frame. So I'll have, an instruct a teacher email me and say, I want to bring my group of 30 students for an hour and a half to your library, and we want to 3D print something. And that's exciting. I'm glad that they're interested in 3D printing, but that's not something that we can accommodate with a group that large and that short of a time frame. It's just not going to happen. So I like to kind of redirect a little bit and figure out what we can do. Because when we say we want a 3D print, they're saying we want to use your makerspace, we want to use your Fab Lab. I want my kids to see what they can do there. And so that we can accommodate. So this is, we want a 3D print, or how do you show off your makerspace in a realistic way? And when I thought about this, all I could think about, and I'm sure you all have heard of these before. I'm not saying something that's going to blow your mind. I think of like a SMART goal, right? So like I want to be like specific with what's going to be accomplished. I want it to be measurable, um, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Like, what is my time frame? What can we do in that time frame that like makes sense, and what can we do that gives the outcome that they want? And for me, what I found is like using the laser cutter to make name tags. I have one here. um Oh, there's my camera. I have a little name tag here. If you have a laser cutter, this is a great activity. Um, if you have like a Cricut, I used to, and kids love this, is when you tie in where they go with your content. So I like to look up what is the mascot for their school. Like a lot of them is like a horse. And I like to make some horse stickers on the Cricut. Um, and with that same button maker, you can make horse buttons. I think that is providing that experience. Now, if they say, I want my kids to learn how to use Tinkercad or what have you, then we can have that conversation. But then that it looks different than I just want to 3D print something. And I used to, and this was when like with how our 3D printers work here, they are kind of more managed by our Fab Lab. At the public library, I had more um uh not authority, but more ability to just like go in and like hook up my computer and do the thing. And when I was there, I like to make coins, or something that I think take like 5 minutes on the 3D printer. And you can make like 15 to 20 coins on the bed. You can measure it out and do the thing. And that is something tangible that they have. But why are we, like, are we just showing how a 3D printer works? Like, what are we doing? And I think with using the laser cutter, I can do a session on Illustrator. Like, this is Illustrator. This is, how we how we take an image and bring it into a form, of a vector image that the laser cutter can read. This is how we do this. And I think that's a bit more valuable than, like going into Tinkercad and doing the thing and then being like, but this is going to take 3 hours to print. So we'll see you later. Um, but I think kind of figuring out what the instructor is really asking for when you do that, I think is important, because I think as librarians, a lot of times we have that idea that like, oh, if someone asks for it, this is what they want. And a lot of times that is true. Like if what they ask for is what I have to give them. But I think when it comes to working with this population, I think sometimes reading into what they're asking for, like, I want to use your fab lab, then we can do that for sure. So I think doing that is an important task, and kind of not getting overwhelmed with like, oh, I've done 3D printing with 30 students. It was really overwhelming. Our stuff wasn't done. It wasn't a great experience for me. I'm gonna say no. And like, and I understand that. I've been there, but I do think that there are different ways to satisfy the customer without giving away um your sanity. And so finding partners, like, where are these people coming from? Who's asking? I think that's an important thing, because I think sometimes uh we have groups. I don't know if this is my first academic library. I don't know if this is just UTA. I doubt it. That just kind of like come into the library from the street, and they've just been walking around and they want some place to like go to the bathroom, but they ask for a tour. So that's wonderful. Excited, happy to see them. But that isn't uh someone who's going to be like, "Oh yeah, we definitely have an hour and a half for you to do a field trip." And to do a field trip, it's not just, let me set this stuff out 5 minutes before they come and it'll be great. That's not, I think all of us know who've done any kind of program, that it's a little bit um more deliberate and intricate than that. So I think I and I have an interesting story about this. So my first or second week here, I was feeling very like ambitious. And I saw a group walking around outside, and I was like, I'm going to track them down. Where are they from? They're going to be my best friends. And that instructor ended up being an Avid instructor here. And I don't know, I know Avid is nationwide. It's I think it does start in elementary school, but I think it mainly starts in junior high. And it's a program. I think it's advancement by, oh, I looked this up. Advancement via individual determination. And they have an Avid class that they go to, and a lot of times Avid students are from historically underrepresented communities in higher education. So their goal is to, these kids to experience college and be college minded. And so that means that they have a budget to come to colleges. And a lot of them go on field trips to colleges a lot year round. They go to 3 or 4. And so all the Avid programs in my area are coming here at some point, right? So I just so happened to meet up with her, and I've gone to her class 3 or 4 times now, and I'll get an email from another Avid instructor like every, you know, once a month at least. So it's definite business for me. But I think just meeting with the right, I think programs are a good place to start, because hosting a grade level here, and I address this later, so I hate to take away my future talking points, but hosting a grade level is hard. A grade level, especially in elementary school, can be 80 80 kids, and I don't have the space. And there's one of me. I do have a student employee, and we'll talk about student employees role in this in a future slide. But that can be hard, and so focusing on programs, I think, is a key. um, I had a group come last week, and they were from a high school, and they were called the STEM Sisters. And that was so fun. Like, they were a club in a high school. Um, And so I think focusing on those smaller groups, I think is really key, because having more than 50 students here is really hard. Our library is 6 floors with a basement, but our floors are not huge, and we don't have huge meeting spaces. So that's one of my bigger issues, I guess, is space. I don't have a wealth of space, and I know probably a lot of you are in the same situation as I am. Like, the idea of that many students can be intimidating. Um, I I also think that never hesitating to, with Girl Scout groups, I've seen a little bit of the chat. I haven't exhaustively looked at it, but I think groups like that, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, your public library, a tour group of 30 elementary students in 20 minutes, I would probably give them a tour. Touring is not my, especially if they were spur of the moment. Anything less than like 30 minutes to an hour, I really can't. Um, I could like give them stickers in the classroom and kind of like talk about how, you have to weed out stickers, and we have a vinyl cutter, and let's go see the vinyl cutter. But especially if it were like impromptu, like off the street, and that's normally with elementary schools, I have found less interest in field trips. Um I would get, and I've gotten real slick with my tour. I know my space, and like that's another important thing. Like, know like your spaces and what hits. Um, yeah, I have become quite the tour guide. Um, and this is what I give groups. So we talked about impromptu groups that come in. And right now with our guest services team, we are working on we have students who man our front desk, student workers, and we are working on those students. Plus, my student and other students doing more of the tours. Um, and so, but I also don't want a group to come in and get a tour, and let's say they come back next year. Maybe when they come back next year, we can do a field trip. Like, we can do something that's like, if you liked this space, if you liked the vibe, then like we can continue this experience more in depth. As more of like, this is kind of like a teaser trailer. So here you'll see something, and I did make this in Canva, and I have it as like a half sheet, as like, hey, thanks for coming during your visit. Um, Here's what we have going on that may interest you, if you're coming back next year, if whatever. um so even having something like this, if you have a lot of spur of the moment groups, and you in the moment, it's like, I even if you're just like, I'm in the middle of eating my lunch, and doing a field trip song and dance right now would would give me a hard time. I think having something that says, thanks for coming, please come back later, this is what we can do later, is important. So this is just an example of something that I have, with like a couple pictures that show proof of people having fun here. um, and then different offerings that we have. And these can always change. These are just what I'm doing at the moment. But I think that it's a good thing to have on hand, something. um so I did want to, in the description of this event, I did mention our camp. So I did want to talk about our camp. This is not something that you can do with with little to no budget, and without some sort of dedicated person for. I'll be honest with you. Um we had a 1 week long space camp this summer. Um and we hosted, our goal was 24 kids, and we had 24 kids register, but 22 came. And in the picture right there, you'll see they did it was like a collaborative game. It just left me, my gosh. But they fabricated those, you'll see the computer stations. Artemis, they did Artemis. And you'll see the fabricated stations there. Those buttons are like 3D printed. Those I think the fabrication was all done on the laser cutter. um but I this is a link. I don't know if you can click on it. It's showing me as a pop-up. Allow the pop-up, please. And I'll move my little screen over. Um, this is we had like just a landing page for the camp. Um, and we did have to go through there's a whole thing about having a camp on our campus. Um, so, background check, we had a child protection course for any student worker who was going to be working. It was a situation, but it was very fruitful. Um and we have a planetarium here. We had some, I think I have some mission patches. Um they sewed the patches onto their bags. Um it was a whole thing. We didn't do the Glowing Planet nightlight, but no one called me on it, so that's okay. We played games, they did game creation, um, and it was a really good experience. And we had 4 scholarships. So we had 4 students who did not pay anything, and it was ages 9 to 12. It was a full week, 5 days, including lunch and a snack. And our bare minimum to charge was $135. I think we did not operate at any kind of profit. But it was a learning experience. And in some aspects, I think everything went almost seamlessly, and then in others, I think we were a little ambitious, which I think when you get people in a room who are really excited about what they do. We have technicians in all of our spaces. um, they get excited about showing off what they do. um, but if you asked any of the campers who came, they would say it was flawless. And I'm not just tooting my horn. Anything you do, any kind of camp that you do where you're using a lot of your resources, they're gonna love. Um, how many staff members? I was full time with the camp the whole week. So was my supervisor. And then we had staff members from our spaces. So 2 from our studios, 1 from our fab lab, 1 from our video game basement, and then student workers. So it's kind of hard to say, but everybody was from the library. We did not have any volunteers, and we did not have anybody else from from any other departments or anything like that. Um, but it was a full week. And then the other staff members who assisted were not on it full time all week. Um, so it wasn't like 100% of like 8 people's lives for that week. It was probably 50 to 60% of their life that week and 100% of mine. And I also had a colleague from my team assist. So like we did have ample help. Um but like this spring, I am part of our experiential learning team, and we have a fellowship that we do with our faculty who apply, who want to integrate more experiential learning into their course. And this faculty member is in the School of Education, and we met. And her site where they did a lot of their, I think it's like a reading class. It's a STEM class, maybe, where they did a lot of their practical work. That relationship deteriorated during COVID, and they haven't been able to redo it. So we're going to host a camp here that her students are creating the curriculum for, and it will be on Good Friday because our campus is open on Good Friday. Schools are closed, but like people who work here still work on Good Friday. Um, so it will be mainly for the children of faculty and staff, and it will be created by students in that class. So like I am not making these activities. I am consulting with them and letting them know, like these are the things we have, these are the things I've tried, these are, like I am definitely active in the process with them, but it's not all me. And I think that is something you can think about doing. And then afterwards with their lesson plans, we're going to make an OER resource, where they will, like have a place to reflect and post their plan. But they are going to be doing those, micro lessons with the campers on that just 1 day camp. I think in looking at this, we did a 5 day camp. It was our first one. It was great. But if that's not where you are, a day camp is also great and also appreciated by your but ask any parent, like, if you can take my kid for a day when I need to not have them, I appreciate it. um but I think um the camp was definitely something. From when I started, there was interest from our AULs, from our dean. So it was very much supported. And I think without that idea, without that support, it would have been impossible. So if that's not where you are, but you still want to do something like this with K-12 in your space, I think a day, I think an afternoon is a great place to start. And if you do have questions about that, you're welcome to email me for more. But I think I think this is my last slide, so I think I'm ending on a downer note, but not really. There are challenges to everything, and I'm happy to share some of my challenges. Large class sizes, like I've said before, are a definite challenge. If someone wants to bring a 90 student grade level, I cannot accommodate that easily. I can do stations, 30 kids at each station, but like that is going to be hard. I have not really been asked that yet at this time. We were at the public library quite a bit, but at the public library we also saw more groups of K through 5 as opposed to older than fifth grade. And I think when you get to junior high, they start to have different groups that they're in. And like instructors travel more with like a smaller group. Um, but your colleague partner bandwidth, and this is something that I could talk about for ad nauseum. Um, your partner, and when I talk about we did not have help with transportation with camp. I hate to break my, but no, and that is something that I would love to provide. Transportation is a trick. It's a tricky thing. So colleague partner bandwidth. I think I have in our creative spaces, we have our studio space, we have our fab lab space, we have our basement space, and within those are run by technicians and leads. And I need their buy-in, like I need their permission to use their space and their resources, and ask for help with their student workers if they have it, and their ideas, and they let me know if something's not realistic, or if like, hey, like on that Thursday we have limited staff, let's talk about this. um and sometimes I know that it's a lot, and especially now, with, I think our student worker situation is getting better. Um, but being low on student workers or being low on staff, that is um, it can be draining to think about a population that is not your immediate priority. I think all of us, like we are at a university, so our students here, our internal um, students are definitely a priority, and then we have these kids coming in who are not, So I think in that, a lot of that comes from my background at the public library with kind of like finessing with schedules and figuring out how this works, and like that is a talent that I have that I think is needed with like, hey, like um breaking down what this is. This is a group of kids who are coming in, they're only going to be here for an hour. They're looking to do this. I will be with them the whole time. Like really, I think laying out what it looks like is very important, because I think sometimes it um it can be hard to, especially if you're just starting out doing K-12 stuff in an organized way. What does it look like? What does it look like to have 30 kids in my space? And then a lot of times afterwards, I'll get like, oh, like that wasn't so bad. Like it was. But as a former children's librarian, I am used to it not being so bad. So I forget that a lot of my colleagues are from the same space that I am. But staffing is always a challenge. I am the only one. I'm the only K-12 dedicated person. I do have team members that are very willing to help. But they have their jobs too, and sometimes they're doing their job. So I think being willing to um, to to tell a teacher who wants to come, like that day is just not a day that I can staff a trip. Or, like if you have 30 kids, like it's going to be me and my student worker, like what can we do? um that's always a hurdle. That's a hurdle with every job. And space, which I've talked about before, that can be hard. figuring out where the group goes. And then if you're anything like our library, there are spaces with calendars that are booked a year out, And so I want this group to come, but I don't have a space. Where can I go? And I think having that flexible mindset in those situations is very important. And sometimes it can be hard to be flexible when you're the person with the reservation and someone else needs it. And trying to figure that out. It is a juggle. It is. And what role are student employees going to play? I haven't had the same student employee for more than, I think my longest student employee has been, he was here this summer. And then his parents didn't support him returning to college, which was really sad. But it that is something, because just building a um building out a robust program for tours, or I mean, in the future the vision is for like me to organize these trips and plan these trips, and etc., but have student employees and maybe an assistant perform them. And at this point, with one student employee, I don't have that. It's hard. So I understand all of these challenges, and I'm working through them actively. But that's my content. I see that we have some questions, so I'm happy to answer what I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
have all the questions jotted down.
Okay. And I
Uh,
answered some, and then others I missed. So yes, please.
okay, so at the top I have, what would you do with a tour group of 30 elementary students for 20 minutes?
Yeah. And with that one, I would give them a tour. I would definitely give. And then if you have like I have those homemade coloring sheets. And like those were made on one of the art pad, like one of the, I'm really bad at that. At like they're digital art. Like they were, so like there is like this, like, oh, this was made by a student worker. Like this isn't a coloring sheet I found on Google. Like they're tailored to our university. They have like UTA and like our horse or whatever our mascot is. Like it's fun. So maybe something like that, that like does have that little like uh touch on it.
Awesome, thank you. Next I have, how do you get the administration to buy in? My library had a successful high school outreach that admin ended because they needed to focus on their own students.
Yeah, that's understandable. I think and see, that's where I kind of am weak in my knowledge, because I came on because admin wanted it. So I think working backwards from that, right, is like there are a lot of articles about, and I went to a webinar about a year ago, and it was two librarians. They'd written a paper. Again, I need to have a list of these links, of like the K-16 pipeline, and like what is that, like what is preparing our students of tomorrow. And I think that's really important. Like we have a lot of first generation learners, a lot of people who, when they think, and I didn't tell this story, and I meant to. I've had 2 or 3 times now where a group of students has been in, and they'll tell me, oh, my cousin goes here, my sister goes here, and then they see their family member here. And this is a school of 44,000. Like it's not small, but it's so fun when like they're like, oh, like you use the library, like, and we're on the first floor. Like I don't take them into the stacks, people. Like we pretend like the rest of the library does not exist. I'll be honest, unless it's a research trip, maybe. But like we're in our creative spaces, and like they see their family member here, or they see people here. We have a very diverse campus. We're a Hispanic serving institution. And they see students that look like them. And I think, oh, I just got, but like I think that is so important, that like they come in here and they see people who look like them, and who have backgrounds like they do. And like I think that it's really valuable. And I communicating those stories, I know, is hard work, but I think it can be done.
Awesome. And how do you measure the success of your programs?
That's a good question. And when my boss would be like, how do you do that, Morgan? Um, I I think a lot of it is anecdotal from like teachers, or like I have been working on my extension activities, because that was part of the vision for my position, that like they take something here and then we build out, and I haven't completed that yet. One thing I did do, and I didn't even talk about this here, gosh, was we have a Texas history exhibit in our archives right now in our special collections, and we have a map expert, and what we did was we laser cut plates for 3D. We laser cut them for printmaking, and they're in the different shapes that Texas has taken during its history. And so they did this printmaking of overlapping shapes of Texas. And we had a piece of letterhead from historic San Antonio. It was like from the 1800s. And it was scanned in. So I asked a student to image trace it to like help the print quality, and so we did that, and our archivist was like so happy, because he was like, I've always tried to do this, and like I think he just didn't. But I sent home the letterhead with the teachers to like, you could have them write a letter from a historic text, that, like something. But that's really been the only time that I've done that. So like measuring success, I think, is just like having more business than I did last year, at least in my book. That's a public librarian in me. It's like success is in the numbers, but I know that that's not every measure of success. So I'm working on it.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. Uh, you mentioned the students who receive scholarships, did they have help with transportation?
No. Transportation is tricky, and we have that in the public library too, because a lot of grants, at least through the state of Texas, like our TSLAC, like our state library grants, don't cover transportation. Transportation costs are hard. We don't have a bus here, and liability is difficult. I think it's hard, and that's been something I've thought about, especially since a lot of our population, I think over 50% of the Arlington population is Hispanic, and a lot of those families at home, like, they have one car. It's like, how is the mom supposed to get her kids here, and I don't have an answer to that question, and it bugs me.
Thank you. Let's see, this next one's a little long. Um, Morgan, would you or anyone else be willing to chat individually or meet as a group to talk about rules and procedures for K through 12 visits in academic libraries? This person is in the process of revamping their K through 12 procedures. I think that's a
Yeah,
good,
my
yeah.
contact information, I think, is in the event. Send me an email whenever. Happy to do it. Um, Yeah, for some reason December's been really busy for me. I think schools like want to come here so bad because they don't want to be doing active instruction at this time. But yeah, anytime. And yeah, I just clicked on that link. That looks really cool. The P16. Thank you. Um but yeah, just send me an email. And then if I get emails from different people, I'm happy to like put together, like send invitations for an event or something like that.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Do you have any suggestions for a community college library that has visits occasionally from classes from a preschool that operates on campus, usually groups of 25 to 30 kids under 5 years old?
Oh, I love this. I really do. Well, coming from a children's librarian, I would love to have a school on campus. My graduate school did. Florida State had a magnet school. I think a lot of campuses do. Um, I would like, you could definitely, and story time is not just like something I throw around. Like, I know it's a skill, and if you don't have that skill, or you don't have anyone who has that skill, I wouldn't recommend um you jump in to story time. But if you do, I think especially with a preschool, what we used to do when they would come to the public library would be to have it, and we would pick, like library related, like children's books. There's a few. Trying to see if I recruited one of my coworkers from the public library here, and I don't know if she's listening right now. Um, but I would definitely do like a story time. Like we used to do like scavenger hunts. You could always have a scavenger hunt, and that's a passive program you can have running all the time, and it could be picture based for pre-readers. um Something like that. Stickers, like I feel like a broken record. I think anything like that, those coloring pages. We used to do like bags are really cheap on Amazon, like little tote bags are like, and I know we're adding to like waste when I talk about that, so I'm not meaning to, but little tote bags that they can decorate. You can have like some Sharpie, like whatever, stuff like that.
Awesome. Do you have any experience with story hours during the summer for homeschool students or even their professors' kids?
Yeah, I tried to do a homeschool outreach program 2 Saturdays ago and no one came, but I'm not going to give up. Um, but we have the barrier here is like our library is really far from parking. So like it's hard to get people like even with camp, that was one of the things. I think we had a whole meetings like dedicated to like where are we going to pick them up? Like because we don't have parking. You cannot drive up to this library. Um, so I think story hours are fun of professors' kids. I never really thought about that during the summer. But during the summer, I go to Boys and Girls Club and I go weekly. I did that with the public library, so I've been doing that a long time. And bring like a STEM activity. When I say STEM, I mean like light STEM, like more not arts and crafts, but like arts and crafts adjacent. And but that's just because of my background. Um, and I see a questionnaire, do I ever go to schools or community groups? I do both. Because in the public library, I had outreach kind of like beaten into me. So like I do both, but I could probably have enough business just having them come here. But I do both, especially with the Avid classes because like they come. So like I don't feel as bad if a school I know is coming, but they're like too big for me to do a trip. So I'm going to do a tour with them when they come, but I'm going to go to them and do like an experiential learning activity. That makes sense in my mind. Like, so that's what I did. I did all of her 7th and 8th grade a couple weeks ago. And I think they're coming in the spring and they'll probably do a tour when they come. And it's like, okay, like I've done the thing with them. They can come and do a tour now.
I have one more question from the chat. How do you make connections with K through 12 schools or community groups for partnerships?
Yeah, I just like, um, get over my fear of going up to people and like tell them this is me, this is my card, this is what we're doing. And that can be hard, I know. um Groups that come here and I've given them my card to be like next time you come, and really word of mouth has really worked with the Avid groups. Like I get an email from an Avid group, like I said, maybe every other week. Like it really has. Teachers talk, I mean, so there's that. With community groups, I don't have as much. Since I worked at the public library, I tried to have, that was the homeschool group I tried to come, but it was, maybe it just wasn't the right weekend. And maybe I need to go and then they come, that type of thing. Um, but yeah, and we do have a link on the website and some people just find us through the website. So we do have that. And so our Fab Lab is known within the educational community. So that's how they get to me sometimes too.
Awesome. And one last question just popped up in the chat about partnering with a public library on
Yeah.
programming marketing.
Yeah. And but a year ago, no, more than a year ago now, a year and a half ago, I was with our local public library for 6 years. So I do that. Um, it's just the barrier of getting onto campus that's like hard for people. Our campus just isn't. Our library's in the middle, kind of, which is cool for students. But for walking in off the street, it does provide like I think I'd have to go there a few times, which is fine. I guess I will. But yeah, for anybody who sends me an email, I'd be happy to put together like an email, like a group email, and we can maybe do one of those. Like I've been getting these like scheduling things where like people pick the date that works for them or whatever, and we can meet. If y'all want to do that, just send me an email.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you.
Morgan, if you would be willing to put together some of those resources, I know someone
Yeah.
asked, I can send it out with the
Yeah.
Zoom link to all the
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I just need to go back through my presentation and like see what resources I talked about. But I will definitely put together like some links and stuff like that. But I'm happy to oh yeah, and one thing that has helped me is we have a guest services page for the university where they book group tours just of the university, and on there it has suggestions for other things to do, and I emailed that person and now I'm on the list of suggestions of other things to do. So I get business through that too. if you want to do that. Just be careful what you wish for, because you will get emails. But yes, that is something I've done recently that has drummed up some business. That wasn't me like standing on a street corner screaming about the library.
Awesome, thank you. I think we're good on questions and we've hit 2 o'clock.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye. Happy holidays.